I never thought my biggest act of generosity would turn into my worst nightmare. One minute I was celebrating clearing my family's $212,000 mortgage. The next I was staring at a video showing them selling the very same house behind my back. My blood ran cold as I heard my sister Sophia laugh. "He thinks it's his." My hands trembled with rage when Tyler added, "40,000 extra, and it's yours." Before I continue this story, if you're watching this video right now, type "deed" in the comments below and hit that subscribe button to follow how I turned the tables on my family's betrayal. Growing up in our family home in Riverdale was everything to me. Those whitewashed walls with chipped paint and the creaky wooden floors held every significant memory of my childhood. After my parents died in that terrible car crash when I was just 14, my grandparents stepped up to raise me and my younger sister Sophia in that house. They sacrificed everything to give us stability during those traumatic years. I never forgot their kindness. When I turned 18, I moved to San Francisco to pursue my dream of becoming a software engineer. The startup I joined eventually took off, and by 35, I had finally achieved financial security. I had a comfortable condo overlooking the Bay stock options, worth a small fortune and enough savings to live without worry. Despite the distance, I called my grandparents every Sunday and visited during major holidays, bringing gifts and helping with house repairs whenever I could. My world shifted on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon when Sophia called me, her voice cracking with emotion. "Isaac, we need to talk about Grandma and Grandpa," she said, sounding desperate. According to her, our grandfather had developed severe heart problems requiring expensive medications and treatments not covered by insurance. Medical bills had piled up, forcing our grandparents to refinance the house multiple times over the years. "The bank is threatening foreclosure," Isaac, Sophia explained. "They owe $212,000 on the mortgage, and there's no way they can make the payments anymore. They're going to lose the house in 30 days. I felt my stomach drop at the thought of our grandparents now in their 70s being forced out of the only home they had known for decades. "Why didn't they tell me?" I asked, feeling hurt. They had kept such serious problems from me. "You know how proud Grandpa is," Sophia replied. "He didn't want to burden you with their problems. They figured they would find a way to manage, but things got worse faster than they expected." That night I couldn't sleep. Images of my grandmother cooking Sunday dinners in that kitchen and my grandfather teaching me carpentry in the backyard workshop flooded my mind. That house represented everything stable in my life after my parents died. The thought of strangers living there, while my grandparents struggled in some tiny apartment, was unbearable. By morning, I had made my decision. I would pay off their mortgage entirely as a surprise gift. I calculated that between my savings and selling some company stock, I could gather the full amount without significantly impacting my financial security. This was my chance to repay the unconditional love and support they had given me during my darkest days. I called my financial advisor and began liquidating assets. The process took several days, during which I spoke with Sophia frequently to get updates on our grandparents' situation without revealing my plans. She emphasized how desperate things had become, mentioning that Grandpa's condition was deteriorating from the stress. While gathering the necessary paperwork from Sophia to proceed with the payment, I noticed something odd. The mortgage statements showed recent modifications I couldn't understand. When I asked Sophia about them, she dismissed my concerns, saying they were just attempts to negotiate better terms with the bank. I also overheard her on the phone with our cousin Tyler during one of our calls, speaking in hushed tones about the plan and making sure Isaac doesn't find out too soon. A small voice in my head warned me something wasn't right, but I silenced it. These were the people who had been there for me my entire life. What reason would they have to deceive me? Besides, time was running out before the foreclosure would become final. I decided to proceed with the payment, attributing my unease to the stress of making such a significant financial decision. Working with the bank took another week. I insisted my name be added to the property deed as a co-owner during the process. The bank representative seemed surprised by this request, but agreed, since I was providing full payment. On June 15th, I transferred $212,000 to clear the mortgage debt completely. The confirmation email arrived at 2:37 p.m., bringing with it a profound sense of accomplishment and joy. I imagined the relief and happiness my grandparents would feel knowing their home was secure forever. I planned to fly home that weekend, to surprise them with the news and the newly updated deed showing the house was fully paid off with my name now included as a co-owner. Exactly 1 hour and 13 minutes after receiving confirmation of the mortgage payment, an email arrived in my inbox from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line read, "Watch this now, your family's real plans." My first instinct was to delete it as spam, but something about the timing and specific mention of my family made me hesitate. The message contained no text, just a video attachment. Against my better judgment, I downloaded and opened the file. The footage was clearly taken from inside my grandparents' house, specifically their living room. The shaky quality suggested it was recorded secretly on a smartphone. I recognized Sophia, immediately standing next to Tyler, and a woman in a business suit holding a portfolio. They were talking to a young couple seated on the sofa, the same sofa where I had spent countless evenings watching TV with Grandpa. "The timing works perfectly," the woman in the suit was saying. "Once the mortgage is paid off, we can proceed with the sale immediately. The new deed will be processed within 24 hours. The young man asked. "And the current owners are completely on board?" Sophia laughed, a sound that sent chills down my spine. "My brother Isaac is taking care of the mortgage. He thinks he's saving the house for our grandparents, even added his name to the deed. But he lives in California," Tyler added with a smirk. "By the time he realizes what's happened, the sale will be complete." The businesswoman, clearly a real estate agent, smiled reassuringly at the couple. "As I explained, once the mortgage is satisfied and we process the necessary paperwork, the house can be legally sold. We're offering an incredible deal at $252,000, well below market value for this neighborhood." Tyler leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial tone that the microphone barely picked up. "40,000 extra, and it's yours. My cousin thinks it's his, but he'll never know until it's too late." The footage continued for another minute, showing them discussing renovation plans and moving timelines. My grandparents were nowhere to be seen in the video. I sat frozen, watching the clip on repeat. Each viewing felt like a physical blow. The people I trusted most in the world, my own sister, my cousin, possibly even my grandparents, had manipulated me into paying off their mortgage so they could sell the house for profit. They had exploited my love and generosity in the most calculated way possible. My hands shook as I tried calling Sophia. No answer. I tried my grandparents' landline. No answer there either. I texted Sophia. "We need to talk now. It's an emergency." She read the message but didn't respond. The shock gave way to a crushing sense of betrayal that made it difficult to breathe. These were the people who had shaped my entire concept of family and trust. How long had they been planning this? Was my grandfather even sick? Or was that part of their manipulation too? I needed verification from someone I could trust. I found the number for Mrs. Jackson, our elderly neighbor, who had lived next door for decades. She answered on the third ring, delighted to hear from me. "Isaac, what a lovely surprise. Are you coming to visit soon? Hi, Mrs. Jackson. I'm actually calling about my grandparents. Are they doing okay? I heard Grandpa has been having heart problems." There was a pause on the line. "Heart problems? Your grandfather was just mowing his lawn yesterday morning. He seems fit as a fiddle to me." My suspicions confirmed, I asked carefully. "Have you noticed anything unusual happening at their house lately? Any strangers coming by?" "Oh my, yes," she replied. "There's been quite a parade of people looking at the house these past few weeks. Your sister put up one of those for sale signs, but she took it down a few days ago. I figured they had told you about moving." The betrayal cut even deeper. There was no illness, no financial crisis, just a calculated scheme to exploit my generosity. After thanking Mrs. Jackson, I spent the next hour scouring social media for additional evidence. What I found only intensified my anger. Tyler had posted photos of a brand new truck he had purchased last week with a caption about exciting new ventures. Sophia's Instagram showed her touring luxury apartments in the city center, well outside what a kindergarten teacher's salary should afford. The most damning evidence came from an old conversation in a messaging app that Tyler had forgotten to delete, where he explicitly discussed taking advantage of Isaac's success and using his guilt about moving away to fund their plans. They had counted on my love for my family and the distance keeping me from discovering their scheme until it was too late. The people I would have given everything for had seen me not as family but as nothing more than an ATM to be drained and discarded. I allowed myself exactly 30 minutes to process my emotions, to feel the hurt, betrayal, and rage coursing through me. Then I switched into problem-solving mode. These people had underestimated me. They thought I was just a sentimental fool, easily manipulated by family ties. They were about to discover how wrong they were. My first call was to Charles Bennett, a college friend who had become one of San Francisco's top real estate attorneys. I explained my situation, forwarding him the video and mortgage documents as we spoke. They made a critical mistake adding you to the deed, Charles explained after reviewing everything. As co-owner, they legally cannot sell the property without your signature. However, we need to act quickly. If they've already arranged a sale, they might try to forge your signature or find some legal loophole. We developed a two-pronged strategy. First, legally protect my financial investment and property rights. Second, confront my family with indisputable evidence of their betrayal. What about the money I already transferred? I asked. Since you have evidence of fraud, we can petition the bank to freeze and potentially reverse the transaction, Charles assured me. But we need to move fast, within 24 hours ideally. With a plan in place, I took my first countermeasure. Without any accompanying message, I uploaded the incriminating video to our family group chat that included Sophia Tyler, my grandparents, and several other relatives. The response was immediate and chaotic. My phone exploded with notifications. Sophia called 7 times in succession. When I didn't answer, she sent a flurry of messages. Isaac, it's not what it looks like. Please let me explain. You don't understand what's really happening. Tyler took a more aggressive approach, demanding to know who had recorded the video and threatening legal action against the spy who had violated their privacy. My grandparents remained conspicuously silent. I ignored all communication while executing the next phase of my plan. I arranged an emergency meeting with the regional manager of the bank that held the mortgage. Armed with the video evidence and Charles's legal guidance, I presented my case for fraud and requested an immediate reversal of the payment. This is highly unusual, the manager admitted, but given the clear evidence of fraudulent intent and the fact that the funds were only transferred yesterday, we can initiate a reversal process. He explained it would take 24 to 48 hours to complete, but assured me they would expedite the process and place a hold preventing any property transactions in the meantime. With my financial interests secured, I booked the next flight home, a red-eye, that would land me in Riverdale by 8:30 the following morning. I spent the 5-hour flight reviewing additional documents Charles had prepared, including a cease and desist order preventing any sale of the property. Touching down at Riverdale Regional Airport, I rented a car and drove straight to my grandparents' house. The familiar tree-lined streets of my childhood did nothing to calm the storm of emotions inside me. As I turned onto Maple Avenue, I noticed several unfamiliar cars parked outside the house, including one with a real estate company logo. Perfect timing. I parked across the street, gathered my documents, and approached the house where I had once felt so safe and loved. Through the front window, I could see several people gathered in the living room. Sophia Tyler, my grandparents, the real estate agent from the video, and who I assumed were the prospective buyers. I didn't bother knocking. Using the key I had kept all these years, I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The conversation stopped abruptly as every head turned toward me. The shock on their faces would have been comical under different circumstances. Isaac. My grandmother gasped, her hand flying to her throat. We weren't expecting you. Clearly, I replied coldly, placing my briefcase on the coffee table. Please continue. I believe you were discussing the sale of my house. The real estate agent recovered first, extending her hand. You must be the brother. I'm Janet Williams, from Riverdale Realty. There seems to be some confusion. I ignored her outstretched hand. There's no confusion. I have documentation proving I am now co-owner of this property following my payment of the mortgage yesterday. I also have evidence that this entire situation was orchestrated to defraud me of $212,000. I turned to the young couple. I suggest you find another property. This one isn't for sale. The couple exchanged uncomfortable glances before gathering their things and quickly exiting the real estate agent trailing behind them with profuse apologies. Once they were gone, my grandfather stood up, his expression a mixture of anger and embarrassment. "You had no right to interfere like this." "We had everything arranged." "Everything arranged," I repeated incredulously. "You mean your plan to steal my money and sell the house I just paid for?" "It wasn't stealing," Sophia protested. "We were going to split the profits with you. You would have gotten your money back plus some extra. When after I discovered the house I thought I saved was sold to strangers. After you had already spent your share, I pulled out the bank documents. It doesn't matter anyway. The payment has been reversed. The mortgage is still active." The color drained from Tyler's face. "You can't do that. The deal is set to close tomorrow." "The deal is dead," I stated flatly. "And so is my relationship with all of you." While they processed this information, I began searching through drawers and cabinets in the living room. Tyler stepped forward as if to stop me. "What do you think you're doing?" "Looking for the truth," I replied, not pausing my search. In the bottom drawer of my grandfather's desk, I found what I was looking for, a folder labeled "Property Sale." Inside were documents dating back 6 months, outlining their entire plan. Notes in my grandfather's handwriting detailed how to approach Isaac about the mortgage and emphasize health problems to generate sympathy. Another document showed how they planned to split the proceeds: 40% to my grandparents for the house, 30% to Sophia for coordinating with Isaac, 20% to Tyler for finding buyers, and a mere 10% set aside to compensate Isaac after the fact. I placed these documents on the table one by one. 6 months of planning. Detailed scripts for what to tell me. Fake medical reports. I looked directly at my grandfather, the man who had taught me about integrity and honesty. Was any of it real? Were you ever planning to tell me the truth? The silence in the room was deafening. Finally, my grandmother spoke, her voice small. "We needed the money, Isaac. The house is worth much more than the mortgage. We're getting older and wanted to move somewhere smaller, use the extra money for retirement. Then why not just tell me that I would have helped you sell the house legitimately? I would have given you money for retirement if you needed it." "Because we knew you'd be sentimental about the house," my grandfather admitted. "You always talked about keeping it in the family." This seemed easier. Easier. They had chosen to deceive and manipulate me because it was easier than having an honest conversation. The final betrayal wasn't the scheme itself, but the realization that they had never respected me enough to tell me the truth. The legal aftermath took 3 months to fully resolve. The mortgage remained in place since my payment had been successfully reversed. Without my financial intervention, the bank proceeded with foreclosure as originally threatened. However, with Charles's expert guidance, I was able to make a legitimate offer to purchase the property directly from the bank once it was repossessed, securing it for $170,000, significantly less than I would have paid under my family's scheme. During this time, I had no contact with any family members. Sophia attempted to reach out several times with lengthy apology messages, but each one focused more on justifying their actions than acknowledging the pain they had caused. Tyler disappeared altogether, having apparently moved to another state. My grandparents sent one formal letter co-signed by both, expressing regret for the misunderstanding, but maintaining they had only wanted what was best for everyone. Their deliberate refusal to acknowledge the calculated nature of their betrayal told me everything I needed to know about the possibility of reconciliation. The emotional toll was immense. I took a leave of absence from work and spent weeks cycling through anger, grief, and disbelief. The foundation of trust I had built my entire life upon had been shattered. If the people who raised me could betray me so completely, who could I ever trust again? I found unexpected support through an online forum for victims of family financial fraud. Their stories helped me realize I wasn't alone in experiencing this particular type of betrayal. Through their guidance, I began journaling daily, practicing mindfulness meditation, and eventually attending a support group in San Francisco, led by a therapist specializing in family trauma. Dr. Melissa Hayworth, the group facilitator, helped me understand that my family's actions reflected their own character flaws, not my worthiness of love and respect. "The people who can hurt us most are those we love most," she explained during one session. "Your willingness to help your family financially wasn't weakness. It was an act of love." They're the ones who should feel ashamed for exploiting that love. Gradually, I stopped blaming myself for being naive and recognized the strength it had taken to remain compassionate and generous despite my success. Those qualities weren't flaws to be corrected, but virtues to be protected, even as I developed healthier boundaries. 6 months after the confrontation, I made a decision that surprised everyone in my support group. I would move into the house in Riverdale. My life in San Francisco had become successful but somewhat hollow. The betrayal had forced me to reevaluate what truly mattered to me. The renovation process became unexpectedly therapeutic. I tore down walls that held painful memories and created new open spaces filled with natural light. The kitchen, where my grandmother had taught me to bake, became a modern cooking space where I hosted dinner parties for new friends. My grandfather's workshop in the backyard was transformed into a home office where I could work remotely for my company, Mrs. Jackson next door became a surrogate grandmother figure, often bringing over homemade cookies and sharing neighborhood news. Through her, I met other neighbors and gradually built a community of genuine connections. When I explained my family situation to new friends, I no longer felt shame or embarrassment, just a matter-of-fact acceptance that some family ties are broken beyond repair, and that's okay. Perhaps the most meaningful change came when I converted the spare bedroom into a consulting space where I offered free financial advice to people recovering from family fraud. Transforming my painful experience into a way to help others gave purpose to my suffering and accelerated my healing. One evening, as I sat on my new deck watching the sunset, I realized something profound. The house that had once represented my deepest pain now symbolized my greatest triumph. Not because I had won it from my family, but because I had reclaimed it as a place of healing growth and new beginnings. Trust is never blind again for me. I verify important facts, get agreements in writing, and listen to my intuition when something feels wrong. Yet I haven't allowed betrayal to harden my heart completely. I still believe in generosity and compassion, just with wiser boundaries. The most valuable lesson from this ordeal wasn't about money or property. It was learning that family isn't defined by blood or shared history, but by mutual respect, honesty, and genuine care for each other's well-being. Sometimes, the family we choose, friends, mentors, neighbors, and even strangers who become allies in our darkest moments, provide the authentic connection our biological relatives cannot. Today, I live by a simple truth. Home isn't the place where you were raised. It's the place where you are truly seen and valued for who you are. Sometimes we must lose our first home to find or build our true one. What would you have done? In my situation, would you have confronted your family differently or taken another approach entirely? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Your support helps me continue sharing these difficult life lessons that might help others facing similar situations. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, sometimes the greatest act of self-love is walking away from those who take your love for granted.